Okay, well, thank you. So I have a question as we get started. Before you saw our name appear on the agenda, how many of you were familiar with SkyTouch technology? A couple. Okay. Well, I will take just a minute or two to sort of fill in some blanks about SkyTouch so it gives some frame of reference, because really what we're looking to do is use this time to share our story. We've really been at this for quite a while. We've brought on a lot of properties into the cloud, and we want to make sure that we share that with you, but I think it will help to have just a little bit of context. So I will actually start with what we call SkyTouch 101. Again, I'll keep it brief just to let you know a little bit about who we are and what we've done so that it helps frame what you'll hear after that. Charlie is going to come up and speak about lessons learned. As with any experience, you learn a lot along the way. We continue to learn quite a bit, but we think we have some learnings that will be of value to you. And then Larry's going to talk about vision, both kind of what our vision was as we started, as well as how that vision has evolved and where we see it going in the future. And then finally, we'll kind of wrap up with a little bit about engagement, because for us, engaging with our users as well as engaging with the industry is really important. So I guess first on the SkyTouch 101, we're a little bit of a dichotomy because we're part entrepreneur. We weren't in the marketplace before April of last year, and yet we have a team of over 150 people, over 1,000 years of hospitality experience, and we have a $30 million customer base. So it's a really interesting opportunity to be entrepreneur and established business. And it's really been an interesting opportunity for us to bring this great platform into the market with the experience that we want to share here. So we've actually been at this for 10 years. This platform that we are now presenting to the marketplace was actually born in the cloud. It was not something that was working somewhere else and tried to figure out how to make it work in the cloud. It was born in and of the cloud. And Larry was there from the beginning and can recollect that when you think back to that time, the way you had to design it was to work well on a 56K modem. So again, he's in a unique position to talk about vision then and vision now. We also, through that time, have led over 8,000 hotels into the cloud. And so that experience of taking 8,000 hoteliers and helping them get through that transition and begin to understand how this will work and why it will work and why it's better than where they've been before has certainly taught us a lot of lessons. And again, Charlie will help share some of those with you. We're really thrilled that around the world we have over 50,000 users, and we really look to them to be our greatest source of inspiration and really innovation. We're very, very focused on innovation. Larry actually helped us. He's kind of our chief innovation officer, although we haven't talked about that title yet. Sounds fun. You like that. But we actually had something we called the Alpha Games. I guess we all have been watching the Hunger Games movies lately. But we invited the entire company to come together for a day, choose their own teams, choose their own subject, and work for the day on anything they wanted to as long as they could show how it would benefit our customers. And we had 53 of the people came together, spent the day, and it was so exciting to watch as that took place because the energy was so strong, and you had people that 2 days before just had a great idea, but they knew nothing about coding. And then the person that coded knew nothing about how to market it. So they went and found those people in the company, brought them together, and spent the day together. And it was really fun to watch that happen. But our users are the ones that have helped really drive a lot of this. So it's Charlie will speak a little bit about that as we go forward. So we're currently operating in all 50 states, as well as in 7 countries around the world. We have learned a lot each time. Sometimes by what we did well and sometimes by what we did not do well. And each one has really been a great learning experience. And again, we'll try to share a few of those things that we learned along the way, and we absolutely continue to learn. There's still some areas that we're trying to break into from a new marketplace standpoint that we've still got to get past some hurdles that we are tackling. So to help you pick up on some of those lessons learned, Charlie Green, who's been with us for some time and has experience in a number of different hotel groups, is going to come tell you about the part of bringing these people into the cloud. Charlie?
So if we only knew then what we know now. One of the biggest things that we learned really quickly 10 years ago, taking folks to the cloud, there was a lot of fear. Some of these things I'm sure you've heard, thought about, wondered about. There's just a lot of fear out there about going to the cloud. One of the first things that I did when I came on board about 4 years ago, we were still in the process of transitioning folks from the old closet-based system to this new cloud-based system. And I would go out to these conferences with users, and I would get a lot of very positive feedback. People really loved it. And then every once in a while, I would get, frequently, but once in a while, somebody who just hated the idea. Couldn't stand it, didn't want to go there, was never going to happen for them. And it took me one or two of these conferences to realize that those people that really hated it hadn't yet experienced it. And it was really fun because a lot of times people crowd around when they find the IT guy, the PMS guy. And so I would get people actually coming in and saying, you haven't experienced it. It's amazing. So as you think about the cloud, you're going to run into all of this. What about security? What about the internet's going to go down? Do I need some fancy system, some big pipe to run this product? We heard all of it. The good news is we learned from those lessons and we planned for those things. We created a platform that you didn't have to worry about. What was my bandwidth? Rick alluded to the fact we were looking at, could we do this on 56K? Thankfully, we don't have to do that. But we also do know that we can do it on a 3G modem. And so those are things that we planned for, and we planned from the ground up for those things. We learned several things. One of the things that we learned that we didn't fully understand and appreciate is that the transition to the cloud changed the way people operate their hotels. One of the jobs I used to have was actually in operations for hotels, and many days you'd get up be at the hotel at 7:30 in the morning, work until 6 at night, go home, and you're just about to go to sleep, and somebody has a question. And you're the person that's going to be asked the question, right? Well, back in my day, we didn't have the cloud. The internet was pretty new back then. So to go and help them, you either had to push them off to an 800 number or go back to the hotel. What we find from our folks is they love not having to go back to the hotel. Not only can they help their staffs, but they also are able to know what's going on and always have the latest, greatest, up-to-date information. They tell us, before we had mobile-optimized screens, they were using their phones to look at our desktop version to check, am I going to sell out tonight? Wake up in the morning, pour myself a cup of coffee, and find out how to do last night. So that was one of the lessons that we learned is this was a really freeing experience for the operators, and it led them to have a much more healthy work-life balance, which is one of those things with, it's on the checklist of good places to work, but how do you really do that? You give people better tools, and it will happen. So that was one of the things we didn't expect, but we certainly learned. Another thing that we were really pleased with is it was really cost-effective. It was cost-effective for us, but it was also extraordinarily cost-effective for our hotel partners. They were seeing about 72% cost reduction in the hardware expense as they transitioned from one system to another. Not buying that computer that was very expensive and sat in a room that probably wasn't maintained that well. Not buying that, not having to worry about all of the networking hardware that we had required before, of course, sees a lot of savings. When you bring your own access and you have some very thin clients that you work with, you see that cost reduction. We also, Rick had mentioned being born of the cloud. And because we created it from the ground up, we were very aware of how do we make the system like the cloud. So it had to be really intuitive and really easy. That was key to, again, that cost savings. From the properties, they tell us that they actually have team members that they can have on the desk day 2. Checking people in, checking people out, answering phones, using the system to really help drive their work. Another thing that we learned was around using the cloud for deployments. We have a process that we do, we call remote installation. It's a very ingenious, not trademark term, that actually allows us to use cloud tools to deploy our cloud solution. Rick had a slide that had a little picture of a cool little globe with a bunch of countries on it. The majority of those countries, when we deploy, we do not go on site. We're in the cloud. We would be sending somebody to a hotel to log into the website to make changes to a server back here. There's really no need for it. And so we are able to be, again, cost effective on the hotel side, but also be more efficient in providing support. So what did that leave us? When we ask our users, would you recommend this to somebody else? And we ask them very frequently. You can see for yourself, overwhelmingly they would recommend us to other properties. And one of the things when we began with SkyTouch, our first customers were our existing customers wanting to get into their other products. And thankfully, we still have that experience today. While the system's extraordinarily easy to use, being in the cloud, we do, of course, do training. We've won awards for our training, but our best judges also recommend our training to others. I mean, I know we can get a little bit better in that score, and we're working on it, but we're doing pretty good so far, I think. We also talked about enhancements and being engaged with our users. One of the things we learned in the cloud was people have an expectation that there's a different relationship than we see when we have purpose-built tools. Somehow being in that frame of a browser changes the expectation of what the users want and expect. And part of that is they want to interact. And we do this a lot. 60% of our features are directly tied to those things that actual users of the system every day have asked for. You know, I mentioned that we hear from our teams that they're logging in all the time. So there's no reason they're not logging into the phones now, or we've built dedicated apps for them to use on their phones. So now when I get up in the morning, I can see really quick on my phone or my tablet, how did I do last night? We also were able to take that to another level with housekeeping and be able to have mobile devices there for housekeeping. One of the other things you learn about the cloud really quick, and it goes back to that fear slide, the cloud means being available. If you're not up, it doesn't matter. We do 9 million page views a day, in and out. We went up 1/100th of a point this last year, so we're going in the right direction. But that's about 6 hours a year that we're taking any kind of planned or non-planned maintenance. And that includes audit, because our audit's instantaneous. Back in the day when I was an auditor, you'd hit the unfortunate thing of hitting the buttons wrong on each computer down the row as people were calling in, and then you had nothing to use. So we've seen great uptime, and that's one of the key things about being in the cloud. You got to be available to alleviate that fear. Of course, some things don't change. It still requires a lot of planning. In fact, now we have even more planning to worry about. We're constantly looking at what is the forecast, not necessarily of rooms sold, but how many more hotels are going to be out there? How much more data are we going to have? When we're looking at our data center and planning, we need to make sure that we're building out the right infrastructure for that. Of course, we still partner with the hotel. Every one of those 8,000 experiences we've had taking folks to the cloud has been unique. And that is requires a very strong partnership with the property to understand their very unique needs and how that's going to work. And of course, we continue to learn. We listen to users. We develop tools for them and adapt. We're constantly adapting. Our mobile evolution is part of that adaptation. So those are some of the lessons we've learned. Face the fear. Look at all those advantages that you didn't think about. And continue to do the things you do very well, even after you transition to the cloud. With that, to talk about our vision, I'd like to introduce Larry Gorman, who, as Rick mentioned earlier, has been with us from the beginning and has a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Well, I appreciate what Charlie was saying about the fear that hotel users have migrating from a very comfortable and familiar on-premise system to one that is running in the cloud. But I also got to say, as a solutions provider, we have our own set of fears too in making that transition. And when we started this journey 10 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of people doing this sort of thing in the cloud. So we had to do a lot of learning along the way. And certainly, we didn't take this adventure to move to the cloud just for the sake of saying that we did it. There's got to be some larger purpose in mind. And for us, we're looking at about simplifying the experience from the hotel's perspective. And moving all these on-premise systems to the cloud can certainly enable that, and we've seen that in our experience so far. When you look at the infrastructure at a hotel, as we've added more systems to our hotel portfolios, it's become a lot more complicated, and that requires our hotel management staff to shoulder a larger and larger burden in making sure that these systems are working correctly, and that in turn requires a lot more technical savvy in keeping things running smoothly. So as an industry, how are we actually doing in managing the on-premise hotel technology? Well, if you take a look at the closet, the server closet at your typical hotel, you might see some interesting results. Are the cables in the server room nicely bundled together and labeled correctly, or does it look like a bowl full of spaghetti? Is there proper ventilation in the room, or does it feel like a sauna in there? Are you able to finger paint the words "wash me" on the layer of dust that's collected on top of your servers, or is it well kept? Are we sharing this same server closet with a housekeeping staff who like to keep their cleaning supplies in there as well? Certainly the results are going to vary, and some hotels do a great job of this, and some hotels really struggle. But I imagine most people get in the hospitality business because of their passion for hospitality, not because they love doing antivirus patches in the middle of the night or racking and stacking new servers. And so getting more and more of that technology out of the hotel and into the cloud has tremendous benefit for our hotel users. And when you think about those servers, they sit idle most of the time. You count the number of CPUs, the amount of memory that you have collectively installed at a single hotel or at your entire portfolio of hotels, that's a lot of CPU power. That's a lot of memory. And when you expand that count to all the servers we have installed at all the hotels that we represent, that's a staggering amount of capacity that we're probably wasting. Now, as we migrated our customers' on-premise PMS to the cloud, we saw some great improvement there. This certainly was not an area we were focusing on, but we had an on-premise PMS distributed across 5,000 hotels, and that PMS required about 4 CPUs of dedicated equipment per property. Simple math says that's 20,000 CPUs of horsepower that we were able to consolidate into less than 50. That was a nice benefit that we certainly weren't counting on, but as Charlie alluded to, you have tremendous savings in the hardware expense, and this is where a lot of it comes from. And as we're looking to become better stewards of this Earth's resources and we're establishing more green programs, this can really help benefit those efforts. Now, as we move servers off premise and into above property scenarios, we also want to look at the client. It's not just enough to move the servers. We want to be looking for opportunities to do something about the client. Now, your traditional fat client application comes with fat requirements. We have certain minimum operating system requirements, certain processor speeds you require, certain amount of memory that you require. Wouldn't it be great if all that just went away? And we can say to our customers, hey, you have a device that can connect to the internet, has a browser, that's all you need. Go have fun with our stuff. That's really simplifying it for our customers. Now, you have the network. Now, with your on-premise system, we have a lot of data that we're collecting, very important data, and it's stored at the hotel. Now, if the hotel is part of a larger corporate organization, that corporate organization is going to have access to that hotel. And so we end up spending a lot of money building these large distributed private networks to connect the hundreds or even thousands of hotels that may be part of your portfolio. That gets really expensive. And we've seen as we move systems above cloud, the amount of data that's stored on premise goes down, and the expectations of the network, the requirements that we have on that, diminish as well. Certainly, hotels are going to require the on-property local area network to connect their systems locally. But let's take a look at that wide area network. Do we really need that really expensive, high bandwidth, secure, private MPLS network that's costing us thousands of dollars per installation per month? Or can we start looking at just your basic public internet service that might cost $50 a month? We're seeing our hotels are taking more and more advantage of that latter option and cutting down significantly their networking costs. Very simplified. Now, there's a lot of variables that you have to deal with when you're dealing with an on-premise system, and that certainly makes the process of upgrading software across your portfolio of hotels a very interesting one. No hotel seems to be the same, even though they seem to start out that way. They like to have some fun with their systems and their computers and experiment a little bit. And things get really dicey sometimes. A colleague of mine used to have a role in the production support world, and he likes to talk about his old war stories from those days. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite stories from that time when he talked about having to support a hotel whose auto upgrade of their PMS software seemed to always fail, and it would take days to get it working correctly. Well, after a lot of troubleshooting, they started to realize that the PMS server happened to be installed in the general manager's office, and the timing of the auto upgrade just happened to coincide with the time of day when the housekeeper liked to go in the office to do her cleaning. And there were no outlets available in the office, so she would unplug the outlet that happened to be running the server, plugged in her vacuum, and would go about her business. She'd leave with the clean office, plug the server back in, server powers up, everything's working fine. But in the meantime, why did that upgrade fail? Well, there was no server to receive it. So there's just a lot of variables that you deal with that could turn a simple software upgrade across 100 or 1,000 hotels into a multi-week, very expensive endeavor. With a cloud-based system, those same upgrades can happen in minutes or sometimes even seconds, and users get access to that new functionality the next time they log in, simplifying things for our hotels. Simplifying access. I talked about earlier looking at doing something better with the clients. It's not enough just to move the servers above property. We want to do something with the clients. We are living in a mobile-first society. It's been talked about before. People are looking to access their data, their information, where they happen to be whenever they need it. They don't want to be tethered to the front desk. They don't want to have to hop in their car and drive to the hotel. We need to be looking at clients that can deliver that information to them. So when our customers are asking us, can I access my hotel's information remotely? Well, I'm sorry, you need Windows XP, you need 32 gigabytes of RAM, you need this many CPUs. That little tablet doesn't offer that. No, that's not acceptable to our customers anymore. They need to be able to access that information whenever and wherever they happen to be. And we're talking earlier about the wearable technology. I think Heather and Charlie were sporting their new smartwatches that Santa left them this winter, and we're talking about all the cool functionality that they're able to get from that. They can do the texting, they can receive alerts, but can they check their hotel stats back home at their hotel? Well, why not? That's what we need to be looking for. That's what our hotels are expecting. And it's not just the wearable technology, but even in the cars and all the different footprints that we have with all the different mobile technology. That's what our hotels expect. And we can't do that when we have fat client software, for sure. Now, you look back at how hotel technology has evolved over the years. For software solutions that we've offered hotel-facing users, we tend to write software that's going to be installed at the hotel. And for software that we write with the intention of corporate users in mind, we deploy that in some corporate data center somewhere. But hotels need to be able to book reservations just like corporate centers do. Hotels need to be able to manage their guest profiles and their corporate profiles, but so do our corporate users. So the end result has been a lot of duplication of functionality. We have applications at the hotel doing a lot of the same things that similar applications that are installed elsewhere are doing, but of course they use different business logic, different data models, and now we have a lot of work trying to figure out how to integrate all these disparate systems. Now with the leadership of HTNG, we've done a great job, but we have an opportunity to be looking at things a little bit differently. with moving things up to the cloud, the old concepts of property systems versus centralized systems just go away. Everything's centralized. So now we can look at things a little bit differently. We can move away from the application-oriented view of delivering solutions to our hotels and more toward the services-oriented approach, using common business logic, using common data models, so we don't have to worry about trying to reconcile all these differences between different systems that are trying to do the same thing, only slightly differently. So it's an opportunity to simplify things for our hotel users, to unify access to all these different applications so they can have a single point of reference for using their hotel technology. We talked about all the different applications that a hotel may need in order to manage their operations. We got your PMS, you have your central res system, you have sales and catering, you've got payment system, you have all these different systems that hotels need. Often they come with different user ID and password requirements, different user interfaces, different training needs. And you look at a front desk at a hotel, you might see little sticky notes with people's 10 or 15 different passwords and accounts that they have to remember in order to do the work they have to do during a given day. It doesn't need to be that way. And so at SkyTouch, we're not thinking about systems in that old style of application from an application perspective where you have a PMS, a CRS, sales and catering. We're looking at it as a unified hotel operating system. With that in mind, we've got a single user interface with a single set of credentials that a hotel user can use to access all of the technology that they need to run their hotel operations. This is really very visionary. It's not something that we do today, and it requires a lot of cooperation among all the different vendors that are providing these different systems on the back end, because we still have to worry about all of these different systems playing well together. If they're offered by a single vendor, you can implement that with proprietary interfaces, but that's not the world we live in. A hotel may get one solution from one vendor and a different solution from another, but they want to be able to treat it as if it's all part of the same hotel OS. And that is where it is very important for us to be working closely together for standardized APIs, consistent data models, consistent ways of talking to each other. And the leadership of HTNG is going to be key to turn this vision into a reality. There is a lot of work ahead of us to make that happen as an industry, but I think that the benefits are definitely going to be there. And there's only so much we can cover in a 30-minute discussion and a short Q&A afterwards. So I'd like to turn it back over to Rick, where he can talk a little bit about how we can continue this conversation beyond just today.
So we are focused on engagement. We talked earlier, Charlie mentioned that over 60% of the enhancements that we've made to the product set have actually come from users. We have a portal where they can put their ideas and then people can do thumbs up and thumbs down, so we can actually let the users themselves set up those items that they think we should hit the most. Well, we want to do the same thing with the industry. So we've already had some conversations. We know that there's a work group hopefully being formed on above property technology, and so we'd like to very much be a part of that. We also have been working to document a lot of what we've learned. Again, as Larry said, in 30 minutes you can't get too far with that. So we've actually been pulling together a lot of information that we're going to be sharing on our blog. We're going to be sharing via LinkedIn subject groups, and we hopefully will be sharing as perhaps a starting point for the above property work group. And we really hope to engage all of you in that conversation, because as much as we've learned through this process, we know there's so much more to learn. But we're starting out in the next few weeks, we'll be launching something. It'll be a bit of a checklist on how to choose the right partners in this industry. So for instance, we have currently operating in-house IT center, shared IT center. We went through a private cloud environment, and now we're in a public cloud environment. So we've been through all that. Well, we've learned a lot. So we want to put forward a checklist of things that we've learned to look for to make sure that we make the right decisions and put forward the right plan. And then we want to go from there into some frequently asked questions, so things that we've heard a lot from people that we've spoken to and what answers at least we've come up with. Some tips and best practices for implementing, because having done 8,000 hotels, you learn a lot, make a lot of mistakes. We'd like people to learn from that. So we'll be posting those and sharing those, and then hopefully engaging the industry in a dialogue so that we can collectively build up a really, really strong basis for people to build upon as more of us make this move into the cloud. So thank you for your time. That's our story from SkyTouch.